So the first star in the 5-star employee rating system is alignment with core values. We always talk about, if I could just clone myself. Well, the closest way to cloning yourself is to hire people who align with your core values. Because if they align with your true core values, the things that are 100% true to you as the owner, 100% of the time, they're going to, oh my gosh, kind of think like you, kind of act like you, react like you. And so that is why that is the foundation, is assessing candidates based on their alignment with your true core values.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited. We actually have one of my fellow colleagues, Profit First entrepreneurs at the mastery level. So Profit First professional mastery level. And her name is Danielle Mulvey. Now, Danielle has a very unique background. She has a very untraditional background. She actually was a former flight attendant that turned entrepreneur. And she has cracked the code. She and Mike McCallister are actually working on a book together. And I'm going to have her talk a little bit about this book. But she's cracked that code of really retaining and finding those 5-star employees, which are really those top cream of the crop, top 15% of those employees that really go that extra mile and really change the game for a lot of small businesses. Now, Danielle has a very impressive background. She actually has scaled several of her own companies to over $50 million. And one, she's actually scaled to beyond 50 million in revenues while she's only working 10 hours a week in the operation. So I am so excited. I'm like, that would be awesome that we only working 10 hours in the operations. But anyway, I'm so excited to introduce Danielle today. And we're going to talk about the all-in company and really how to recruit that cream of that crop, that top 15% 5-star employee. So please join me in welcoming Danielle Mulvey to the platform. Hey, Danielle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Susanne. This is exciting.
We're excited to have you because, like you said earlier when we were offline, payroll expense is the largest item typically on an income statement. And, and if you're not getting that ROI or you're wasting, by keeping somebody in that spot, you're draining your profits, right? You're draining your profits. So let's talk about the average company. Let's talk about what happens in this average company and why this topic is so important.
Yeah. So, as a rule of thumb, you and I are like numbers nerds and love to have a metric and love to have numbers associated with things. So right off the bat, I'm going to say that if your employees should be producing at least a 3x return on their payroll. So if you're paying someone $50,000 a year, they should be producing $150,000 impact on your business. And, those are the 5-star employees that are producing that 3x return. It's the 1, 2, 3-star employees, the average ho-hum, or dare I say worse employees who are kind of just collecting a paycheck and not producing a return on that paycheck. And you kind of don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it, et cetera. So Mike and I are collaborating on his next book, which won't come out until December 2023. Sorry for the wait. But we can dive into this now and such because what we've discovered, and as you know, the evolution of Mike's books are like the entrepreneurial journey, and Profit First is great, but you kind of get to a point where it doesn't seem like I can cut any more expenses. It doesn't seem like I can increase margin anymore, but I'm still struggling with my profitability. And so what we've seen is with businesses with typically 10 or more employees, $1 million or more in real revenue, as you mentioned, their largest expenses in payroll. And when you have a payroll full of average ho-hum or worse employees, that's killing your profitability because it takes 2 or 3, 1, 2, 3-star employees to do the work of one 5-star employee. And you pay the 5-star employee the same that you'd pay a 1, 2, or 3-star employee. So you could get one 5-star employee to do the work for $50,000, or you would have to have 3 1, 2, or 3-star employees to do that same amount of work that one 5-star employee would do. But these average ho-hum or worse employees are going to cost you $150,000 in payroll. So that's where your profit's going. It's going in inefficient payroll. It's going towards average ho-hum or worse employees.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the bigger you are, it's harder to micromanage everybody. For anybody stuck in that situation of micromanaging, and it feels like you're pushing elephants up the stairs at times when you're in that
those
situation.
are not five. Anyone you have to micromanage is not a 5-star employee.
Definitely, definitely. And so, let's talk about, first of all, in defining that 5-star employee. And I know we talked about that. How do you know what's a 5-star employee? Because, for some people, we've heard Dave Ramsey call them donkeys, and we've heard some really horrible words for that. First of all, let's talk about what is a 5-star employee? Because I know there's a concept that somebody can be a 5-star employee in another job, just not in yours. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about a way that, because we want to be nice to everybody, right?
Yeah. So let me put myself out there first. Okay. I could get a job tomorrow as a bookkeeper because I know enough to be dangerous. Okay. But I would be a 2-star bookkeeper. Yes. The host of Profit First Nation would be a 2-star bookkeeper because I'm not a bookkeeper. I know enough to be dangerous. But that doesn't mean I'm not a 5-star entrepreneur. So people are 5 stars when they're in the right seat, on the right bus, going in the right direction. And they have the mindset and the skill set that is needed for the job. So, while someone might be a 2-star bookkeeper, they're a 5-star in something else. And so as a business owner, that is why it's so important to really vet your candidates in your hiring process and filter out those average ho-hum or worse candidates who are just not the right fit. Because the hard part is we want to believe people. And when someone puts their hat in the ring and applies for a job, they want the job, whether it's a good fit or not. Why? Because no one wants to be rejected, And so people will say, yes, I can do that. And they think, oh, I can fake it till I make it. I just need to get my foot in the door. I just need to get the job. But really, we tend to fool ourselves into believing what people say instead of necessarily what they do. So we like to teach the 5-star employee rating system as a means to objectively hire and retain 5-star employees. So we probably can go through rapid fire through that 5-star employee rating system.
Yeah, let's do that because, I've met some 5-star surgeons that are probably 2-star bookkeepers, that you can tell them over and over again what cash basis accounting is and they still don't get why they owe taxes. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, made $1 million, but okay.
Exactly. So the first star in the 5-star employee rating system is alignment with core values. We always talk about, if I could just clone myself. Well, the closest way to cloning yourself is to hire people who align with your core values. Because if they align with your true core values, the things that are 100% true to you as the owner, 100% of the time, they're going to, oh my gosh, kind of think like you, kind of act like you, react like you. And so that is why that is the foundation, is assessing candidates based on their alignment with your true core values.
I love
then
that.
The second star is the 11 universal qualities of a 5-star employee. So we've identified 11 universal qualities of a 5-star employee. And the interesting thing about this is 2 of them are coded green, which means they're relatively easy to change, and 2 are coded red. And these are real red flags that are so critical to businesses. And the 2 red flags, or the 2 qualities that are coded red, are being limber and listen. So, we really need employees in small business to be limber. We don't use the word flexible. Employees want flexibility. Employers need employees who are limber, right? They sound the same, but they're kind of 2 different things. The expectations of employees with regards to flexibility is different than the employer's expectations when it comes to being limber. So when I say limber, we need employees who are amenable to change, who, don't watch the clock and, can't stay late if you need some extra coverage. They're not willing to pick up an extra shift. They're just too rigid. And that honestly just does not work with small businesses. And then the other red quality is listen. So we need people to be active listeners. We don't want to micromanage. We just want to say it once, right? And make sure it gets done. So it's important that you focus on assessing candidates based on their ability to being active listeners, listening with all their senses, being able to, adjust to the situation, use visual cues to see and listen to what's going on and such. And I have to be honest, I interviewed someone last March for a position. They had passed some initial assessments and some skills testing, and it was the first time for the screening interview. And we were about 3.5 minutes into the screening interview, and she was like talking, but not answering the questions. And so I'm like, this is weird. Let me kind of like dumb down these questions a little bit. And 5.5 minutes in, she's still just talking and not answering the questions. Right there, I said, you know what? I'm sorry. I just don't think this is going to be a good fit for us. So I'll give you back your time. Thank you so much and have a great day. And that was it. Like you're filtering out the majority of candidates. If you're trying to get to the top 15%, 85% of the people who apply will fail in your process, or your gauntlet, as our friend Casey Anton calls it, in taking people through this process. So the 11 qualities, I mentioned 2 of them. That's a really next step to assessing candidates on being a fit for your organization.
I love that. That is some really juicy morsels there. And, even just the first one that you're talking about, like defining your values. And I love the part that we talked about in the beginning, our conversation, is that it's going to be different, right, for everybody. I know during COVID, especially during the Great Resignation, we saw a lot of, people just wanted work-life balance. And I think as employers, a lot of us became lenient, right, on that, meaning that you need to leave by 5, you leave by 5, we just want to keep you forever if we can, so you don't turn over or go resign and work for somebody else. And I know a lot of us, we felt like our skin was just like creeping and itching, right, as we watch people run out the door at 4:55. And again, it was about not hiring in line with our values. They were more interested in getting out it by 5 than going that extra mile if the company needed that. And at the end of the day, to have that profitable company, to have that limber culture, you have to hire within your values.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I appreciate you using the word lenient because it was crazy times. The whole thing is that, yes, the majority of people, all you have to do is focus on the top 15%, the people who want to work, who want to contribute, who really want to put the skin in the game, the people who want to go all in. And it's about never settling for the clock watcher or the person that, just kind of doesn't get it and feels a sense of entitlement to a paycheck.
Oh, yeah. And there are employers out there that do want to have that.
They can have them.
They don't want the limber person, and they're okay with a little bit less margins. They're okay with not being within target allocation percentages. And we need people in the world to employ people in the world like that. So
yeah, it's fine. They can have them. There's plenty. Yep.
So it's about being in line with your values and hiring in line with your values.
Exactly.
That. Now, I also like the part that you talked about the young lady that you interviewed with, and she just wasn't quite answering the question. I know a little bit about Danielle, and Danielle is a driver. Like Danielle does. Her time is her money. Every second counts with Danielle. And I imagine Danielle, that would drive you crazy working with somebody that could not answer the question quickly and efficiently. And again, it's being in line with team members that you can work with. Am I getting that right, Danielle, with that?
Yeah, exactly. And, anyone only wants to say it once. And especially small businesses, like things change. And one thing might be this way one day and it might be another way the other day. And so you need people that are active listeners who really, are taking it all in. They're taking notes. They really, really get it. It's not this,
And they're adjusting to the situation too, and knowing
Exactly.
who they're talking to and making sure they're meeting the needs of the customer, right? Even if that customer is their boss.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect.
So another thing that I get from people is, and I'm going to go 2 different ways because we're looking for that top 15%, right? We have jobs where you got people applying for a job and hundreds that have no business applying for the job.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how do you get to the one? Because we only want one at the end of the day. And then we have that situation where you're putting out an ad and nobody's applying for it.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we shift through the thousands of resumes and how do we attract the one?
Yeah. So let's start with the attraction factor. There's a lot of things that you need to do when it comes to the attraction factor, but the biggest thing is to cast as wide of a net as possible because it's never one thing. It's the sum of all things. So, I tend to find people rely on Indeed or ZipRecruiter. They're on one job board and that's it. And so, you've got to get creative. You've got to get out there. And the interesting thing too, is that a lot of great talent isn't on the job boards. So you've got to get yourself into places. You've got to get yourself in front of potential candidates who aren't searching the job boards, who don't think that they want a job right now. I hired someone recently. We've known each other for, oh my gosh, almost 20 years. And she took a new job somewhere. And she was someone that I, was wanting a person like that. And I've never had that role in my company, and it's chief of staff. And so I said, hey, congratulations on your new job. Just curious, what does it take to hire someone like you? And it's so funny because she's like, well, like it would take this and I would love to work for you. And I was like, oh, well, I was just inquiring because, you took this new job. And she's like, oh, well, let me tell you, this new job is not what they presented it to be. They said their culture is great and all this other stuff. It's like they talked it, but the reality is different than the perception that they try to put out there. So she was not happy at all and was looking for a new job. And so you never know, I don't think she was actively looking on the job boards, but, just networking. I hired someone in my organization over a year ago who was on my virtual bench for 7 years. Someone I, had worked with, and I was a client of theirs. And I had always said to them, over the 7 years, one day I'm going to have something that it's just going to align and we're going to be working together and you'll be joining my organization. And it took 7 years, but when the All-In company came to be, she was like the perfect kind of HR guru to bring on board. So, you want to have a virtual bench. You just kind of want to keep feelers out there. And you really want to be honest in the presentation of your business. You want to get real with your job postings. You want to use clever titles. So for example, you don't want to just say part-time bookkeeper, flexible hours. You want to say looking for a small business bookkeeper with the heart of a teacher. That's a totally different spin on things. And it's going to attract that person who's like, oh my gosh, I would love to, help businesses understand, versus the person who just wants to crank it out, get those reconciliations done, not really talk to anyone. So, there's so many different factors and so many different levers and dials you can twist to make your job posting and what you do in your recruitment process attracting the ideal candidate and honestly repelling the person who it's not a good fit for.
I love that. And so being honest in the ad, I like what you said about your friend, that you actually wanted to have a position like that be attracted to your company. And, apparently they weren't very honest in their ad, but it also speaks to being the employer of choice too, meaning that if you're looking for that caliber, you're looking for that candidate, you have to be an environment that candidate wants to stay in, right?
Exactly. Yes. Retention is key when you get them. But, I would love to wrap up. I kind of got sidetracked, which I apologize to your audience. But the other three criteria in the 5-star employee rating system, so we don't leave everyone hanging. The third criteria are the qualifications. So it's really important. We've identified over 25 qualifications, and you want to pick 9 to 13 of them. And they really help you understand exactly what you're looking for and what you're not looking for in a candidate. And then you want to test their skills in terms of those qualifications as well. So, if you need someone to be creative, they need to be able to show you how creative they are, whether it's coming up with ideas, whether it's coming up with copy, there's so many different ways that creativity can expose itself. In fact, to be honest, when we help our clients recruit preschool teachers, creativity is important in preschool, but it's a totally different kind of creativity than you would need from a graphic designer. So it's really important that you understand exactly what qualifications they need to have, what qualities, and the skill set associated with that. And then the 4th star is having success metrics for the role. So, here are the 3 to 5 key responsibilities. We don't need the laundry list of the formal job description in your posting. Just nail it down to the 3 to 5 key responsibilities. And then you've got to quantify what success looks like in the role. You've got to have success metrics for what those key responsibilities are. And again, that will attract the 5-star employee. When we we have a business that processes long-term care claims. And in that business, we're very upfront. Hey, you have to meet 98% financial accuracy, 95% procedural accuracy, and you need to be processing 42 claims a day. It is very clear that this isn't just claims processing. And if you were to look out there in the insurance world and looked at claims examiner or claims processing jobs, I would guess that 95% of them just have like what you need to do and don't have the success metrics associated with that. But for the hard worker, for the person who is detail oriented and who really enjoys what they do, when they see this job, that's like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. If I'm working with other people that are doing this kind of work, boom, like this is going to be great and fun. Again, an attraction factor and a deterrent to the 1, 2, and 3-star candidates. And then we also have the final star, which I mentioned at the start, is return on payroll. So you want to make sure that when you make a hire and you've identified the 3 to 5 key responsibilities that they're going to be spending the majority of work week doing, that is going to produce a 3x return, maybe even a 4x return on payroll. And you're really getting the bang for your buck. Those are the criteria that make up a 5-star employee.
I love that. So they got to be efficient in processing and very good at what they're doing in order to get that 4x return.
Yeah. I mean, most jobs would say attention to detail. I need 95% procedural accuracy. I'm going to measure you. I'm not just, and again, most jobs say we need attention to detail. Well, what is attention to detail? My definition of attention to detail is probably going to be different than your definition of attention to detail.
Oh, yeah. And also, it helps an employee know when they're winning, right? If you don't know what the scorecard is, it's hard to know that when you hit a goal. You definitely got to make that very apparent with that. It brings up a point, a lot of times in a scaling company, we hit these points of, I call it a big adjustments, like, for example, when you're overriding $1 million, when you're going from 5 to 6 million, you're hitting that 10 million, there's always this crunch where you have to bring in that more expensive employee, right? That maybe that 6-figure employee, or, 100,000, 150,000, sometimes $200,000 job that you're bringing on. And initially you might not get that 3x, right? When you're first bringing that on. And, obviously with all in, you want to get an A player. I'm curious, Danielle, what your take is on those big jumps in the, target allocation percentages and how to adjust for that.
Yeah. So you bring up some excellent points there, especially about, scaling your business and when you take it to the next level. So I think also what's interesting is when it comes to recruiting, hiring, and retaining employees, I believe, number one, you have to have a positive mindset. So if you think that there's no one out there, you're right. There's no one out there. If you think there are 5-star employees out there and you are going to find that golden needle in the haystack, then you will find it.
Your attitude attracts.
Yes, it absolutely does. But, I think what's interesting is that oftentimes the people who started in a company sort of maybe, when the company was 3 employees and doing a few $100,000 a year. And as the company grows, they tend to feel a sense of entitlement. So, as the company scales and grows, and as we need these higher level positions, they tend to have a sense of entitlement. Well, I've been here the longest. I should be vice president of operations. I know I started out as accounting manager, but hey, I'm vice president of operations, yet they don't have the qualifications or the experience. And, they're just looking at the dollar signs. So what's interesting about this, as you talk about scaling the business and hitting new levels, is that sometimes the company outgrows employees. And vice versa. So just be cognizant of that and don't think that you owe the person who started as an accounting manager the VP position. And I also I think we all know that, just because you have a great salesperson, you don't make that person your sales manager. So be wary of that. But when it comes to, like you said, maybe you are now bringing on a VP of operations and you've never had that role before, how do you make that transition to attracting that talent, that person that has experience? You don't give it to the person who doesn't have experience, to be honest. And so you get really clear on, what their 3 to 5 key responsibilities are and how that success will be measured. And you don't give them 6 months just to give them 6 months. People should be able to prove themselves in 4, 6, 7 weeks. And if it's not a fit, you have to rip the Band-Aid off quickly. It's not fair to you and it's not fair to the employee.
I love that. Hire slow, fire quickly. And you're so right with that, Danielle. I've seen even in our accounting firm where we were hired as an external accountant to work with the controller, right? And you've got a controller that doesn't even understand journal entries, that it's making a mess. And it's like, they've been with the company, they were the bookkeeper, and, they gradually got promoted. They don't want to let anybody go. And their money is like 6 figures. And I'm like, and you're a controller and you can't even do journal entries. And now you're paying this external CPA firm a lot of money to micromanage them, which isn't very good.
And it's so unfair because I have seen this exact scenario. And you promote someone who doesn't have the skills, doesn't have the qualifications. You pay them a salary that has changed their lifestyle. And, something happens. Let's just say, you die tragically, and this person doesn't have a job anymore. They need to go out into the market. They will not be able to get another controller job at that 6-figure salary because they're not really that position. And so you can't just, wave a wand and say, you've been with us 5 years. All of a sudden now you are a controller and you are worth 6 figures. That's what people do. But that is a recipe for disaster, failure, hard feelings. We are not in an age where you should expect people to stay with you forever. You want people to grow. And sometimes that growth opportunity is not in your organization and you need to let them fly. Maybe the growth opportunity is in your organization, but it's important that you're protecting the house. You're protecting everything that's going on, and people will come and go, and that is okay.
And I think that's so important to embrace that it's okay to be here for a season, or a reason, or a lifetime, right? It doesn't have to be a permanent life marriage, right?
I was a flight attendant for a year. That was it.
I hope you got to go to some amazing places though while you
did
it. And it's about accepting and embracing that fact. And it's hard. Turnover is hard, especially when you do like somebody and they leave. It is very challenging with that. But just imagine the emotional stress that you have as a business owner for carrying someone that isn't qualified to do the job. And I've even seen the ugly where they actually protect that person, that sanction incompetence where, don't talk about Pookie, don't talk about them. They're doing the best job they can. And it's almost like blinders. And I think it's about being realistic and accepting the truth and really feeling those emotions when Pookie does the job.
And they know, but people don't want, it's like, well, I'm collecting a paycheck. I'll just stay in my comfort zone and such, but they're not happy. They're not living their best life. They're not in their zone of genius. And, when everyone's in their zone of genius, oh my gosh, the magic happens. So you can't settle, never settle.
Definitely. Very good points on that. And, Danielle's telling you about what really happens in companies. She sees a lot of them and she sees that sanction incompetence, and it is very expensive. And you keep someone that's incompetent, you're going to pay the 6-figure salary plus, but it's going to cost you more to get the same result. So she's absolutely right with that. Do not sanction incompetence with that. Now, Danielle, you have dropped some juicy morsels here that I think are game changing. And, I always like to ask our guests if you could leave us with one piece of advice. It can be business or personal. And I know you've got some major juicy morsels. What would that piece of advice be?
It would be I would say one thing that we did not cover besides never settling. That's like the number one rule. But in your hiring gauntlet, in your hiring process, make sure that you include a shadow day, a paid shadow day. It won't cost you that much, but it really will be that final fit check. Are they a fit for us? Are we a fit for them? I've had people come into our companies on shadow day. I had one person come in for 2 days coming from property management and wanted to get in construction because thought, oh, that's exciting. That's new. They worked 2 days in the position. And at the end of 2 days, they said, you know what? I think I want to stay in property management. And I'm like, great, wonderful. It cost me $180 to have that person for 2 days. if I wouldn't have done the shadow day, they would have eagerly taken the job and they would have been miserable for the 3 months that it would have taken them to find another job and leave us. And I would be out 3 months salary of someone who wasn't going to be doing a fantastic job, even though they said they wanted to do it. So having that shadow day is really, really super important. So that would be my advice, is to incorporate a paid shadow day and break bread with them. Make sure they're meeting the rest of the team. Make sure it is just aligning, and give them tests throughout the day, give them assignments, put them to work. Like, let's see, put the pedal to the metal. Do they do what they say they're going to do, et cetera?
Oh, yeah. You'd be surprised how much you can find about somebody when you spend a few hours with them, and that conversation gets to that dull silence and what they do to fill that space. Lots of good juicy morsels there can be found and discovered. I'm curious, Danielle, we're coming out of a space where, if you don't hire fast enough, that person's gone the next day. And I'm sure some of our listeners, they have that fear of, why would I want to do a shadow day? When I have an offer, they gave me 24 hours to accept it, or they're getting plenty of offers, right? Especially A players. Now that everybody's taking the all-in company course, they're able to identify them faster and give them offers. What is your take on balancing the sense of urgency to make the offer quicker to bring in that A player versus wanting to really dig deep and get to know that candidate and make sure they're really a good fit?
So I think businesses struggle with lacking a defined hiring process or a defined gauntlet. So, once you have the gauntlet defined, then you can move people pretty quickly through the gauntlet. It shouldn't take a month. The problem is that they put pause on the candidate because they don't have their shit together, in terms of like what to do next with the candidate. They don't have that testing in place. They haven't designed that shadow day. So when you have a process and a system, a gauntlet already defined and ready to go, it is like plug and play when you flip the switch to say now hiring. And so it's a good balance, but you get consistent results when it's already defined and you're just pushing people through gauntlet. And essentially at each stage, you're filtering out candidates. So you're not wasting your time with the 1, 2, and 3 star candidates.
I love that. So it's really all about the process and having that process. And I can see it just like what you said with the lady that you were interviewing with, and you're asking questions and she's like fishing for answers because she doesn't really know, or she's not, sharp enough to figure out, hey, this person's a driver. I need to get there to that answer pretty quickly. You start to learn, your instinct starts to build of like, we need to save time here and part ways. There's no point in pursuing this opportunity any further. So that process, again, doing it over and over again and honing it in will make that A player just pop right at you.
Exactly. And the 5-star employee rating system really helps you objectively rate the candidates and rate the talent.
I love it. So Danielle, how do our viewers and listeners find you? How do they learn more about the All-In Company? How do they work with you?
Okay. Well, so I know I just rattled through the 5-star employee rating system. I gave you a couple of the 11 qualities of a 5-star employee. So if you text never settle as one word, never settle to 411-321. So never settle to 411-321. You will get our How to Hire a 5-Star Employee guide that walks through the 5-star employee rating system. And it actually includes a cool exercise on using the 11 universal qualities. And what you do is you rate your best employee ever against your worst employee ever. And once you go through that, you're like, oh, I get it. If I would have known this, I would have never hired Joe Schmo. So it's really fun. And then there's a way in that guide to connect with me. You could schedule a call. I'm such a huge nerd. We are collecting stories, good, bad, and for people's experience with hiring great and not so great employees. So I'd love to geek out with you and talk with you about your current recruiting and hiring and what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you. And so you can get my my scheduling link in that guide as well.
Ooh, what a get. I mean, to get a data analysis of what went wrong and what went right to start your process. So definitely go there. So you guys that are driving, I'm going to put Danielle's links in our show notes so that when you pull over at a safe place, you can just go ahead and download it and get registered to get these free juicy nuggets and free gifts that are just amazing. Thank you, Danielle, so much for joining us today and sharing your golden nuggets. I feel like I've gotten the golden 5 stars there of information here that, really can, give us all extra profits, right? When we have great people doing work that they're meant to do.
Thanks, Susanne.
Thank you, Danielle.